Greetings! So, before we completely start the review, I'm just going to note, I'm sick, so I'm probably going to forget something and sound a bit funky. And second thing is, this is going to be one of my last Minecraft videos, period. If not the last. We'll see. But I just don't really do Minecraft anymore. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the review, and let's move on. Okay, so here we are with the trains and the tracks, the fun part. First though, I'll be going over the tracks, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion to this at first, but once you get the hang of it, it'll be pretty easy. So, to place down tracks, all you gotta do is place down one of these little markers. Then, excuse me, you go ahead and after a set amount of distance, place another one down facing in the opposite direction, towards the first one. Then, with a bare hand, right-click. And if you want to change the type of track, go ahead and right-click one of the rails. You can just go ahead and pluck one from the inventory right here. It doesn't matter which one is which. So you go ahead, you can go and scroll through, see which one you want. Like let's say I want to make this a monorail track. Go ahead and boom. That is pretty neat. It is quite neat. Now, this also works for curves. So let's go ahead and make this. Spit that out, right click, and bam. There's not any particular set amount of like certain coordinates that you need to particularly obey. With the exception of straights, I've noticed they can only go to 50 blocks. And now we're going to handle switches. So if you want to make a switch, go ahead and at the base of the switch, place one of these. You only need one of these. So go over here and place that. And for your secondary track, you can just go ahead and place it wherever. Like let's place it over here. And at the base of the switch, go ahead and right-click it. Bang. It automatically fills it in for you. Very, very convenient. Very, very useful. Very, very time-efficient way of putting down tracks and switching them out. Probably the best way that I've seen in any of the mods thus far. Actually, no, it is not probably. It is the best, bar none. So, now we're moving on to the fun part, the trains. There is a fairly limited selection of trains in this mod, and yes, there's a Shinkansen, and it is glorious. Being able to see Shinkansen in a Minecraft train mod it's awesome. I've waited too long for this. But here are your other electric trains. I haven't really tested out that one. That looks like it's probably going to crash if I try to place it. And I've had a couple crashes while dealing with this mod, so I'm not going to risk it. But yeah, we can go ahead and put down this guy over here. There's a very similar selection system to as if you're placing down the tracks. And this also goes for the tree props over there, but I'll be going over that later. Go ahead and place one of these down on the tracks. And if you want to remove it, just go ahead and hit it basically in the same spot where you put it down. If you're not sure where that is, just try to head for the center and the base. Or if you really aren't sure, go ahead and hit F3B to display the hitboxes. The hitbox at the center is the one that you're going to want to go for. Now I will go ahead and display one of the other types of rail cars. Actually, no, I don't want to display that one. Let's go ahead and show off this thing. This looks kind of like one of the Cold War era rockets. I forget the name of it, but this goes to just give you an idea. Model is very, very good looking. Go ahead and take that out, and now we're going to move on to the driving. But before I get onto the driving, I'm going to move on to coupling. This seems to have a very similar coupling system to other mods. You just take the crowbar, you shift right click around the coupler, shift right click around the other coupler, but the problem is I have not been able to get any of these trains to reverse, so I have not been able to hook up any other vehicles to one another. And another thing worthy of note, you can go in and you can right-click on one of the seats. Pretty dandy. But let's go ahead and start driving this thing. So as soon as you enter, go ahead and press E. This will bring up this UI, which is quite interesting. Now, I assume that these two are meant to lock and unlock your doors. They do not open them. So this isn't quite like Zora no Densha. If you go up here, you got your settings, you can put your pantograph up and down. Not sure what IL does. You know, you can turn on the lights, you can activate chunk loader. I haven't really messed around with these two. I just don't really see much of use in them personally. Function seems to be a complete work in progress right now. Formation seems to indicate what other rolling stock and locomotives are attached to your consist. So that actually looks really, really cool. But for the actual driving, although before I move on to driving it, your chime/bell key is I, and your horn is P. Yeah, that's a little, I guess a little unintuitive, but it's displayed in controls. So let's go ahead and hit F5 here. And it's basically just W and S from what I've been able to see. Actually, let's go ahead and get back into the main right here, because being in any of the other views will not display the, the throttle. Now, personally, I've not, it seems like putting, like hitting S will make you go forward instead of, W, which is a little unusual. I haven't really been able to get to brakes to work on this thing, so basically what I have to go ahead and do is, oh dear, get out of here, is inflict myself with a lot of speed and try and knock out the locomotive. But as you can see, it's fairly smooth rolling. Now, I do believe there's a little bit of a tilt function once you get to higher speeds. Oh, I believe we just caught a bit of a glimpse of it right there. Now, I cannot zoom out, so being able to tell if there's any tilt is going to be a bit more difficult. I believe you can oh dear. I believe you can only tell it's there from the first-person view. I'm not quite sure. Let's go ahead and nix this, though, and move on to the other sections of this mod. So here are with the blocks and the props. I'm going to try to keep this short. Now over here we have what seems to be materials for, well, with the exception of the steel block right here, is blocks for sets of coke ovens. Now I assume it's going to work the same as the coke ovens in every other industrial and railroad mod, and it does seem to be like the modder plans to have it so that you'll be able to create these trains and whatnot in survival mode, and there's further evidence backing this up. I'll show in a moment. Over here we have stairs. We have a signpost right here, which you can go ahead and change if you right-click this. Go ahead, place that. Oh dear. Oh, I got confused with something else. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, right here. I'm sorry. Go ahead and right-click this, and you have this just comes across and fills your screen. Go ahead and place that. And there you go. Now for these, I've not been able to figure out how to get wires to go across these two. If there's not really much documentation on this mod, so I have very little to go off of, so I'm sorry. But you have at least something for imitating overhead wires right there. Right here we have the rail and rail train workbench accordingly, and it is literally called the Rail Train Mod Workbench. And I assume this is where you will go to create tracks and trains. Now, this system right here seems to... there seems to be some sort of redstone to wireless and wireless to redstone system going on alongside a sort of crossing gate system. Now, I'm not sure if the crossing gate system is complete yet. I haven't really gotten to trying it out, partly because I haven't a clue how to use it, so I'm sorry. Now, over here, I am not sure what this does. It's literally just called the moving machine. I do not know what it does. When you right-click it, you just get this. Now, whether that's to simulate, like, I guess similar to how you would see a ghost on a racetrack in some of these racing games to give you an idea how the track would flow, I'm not sure. Over here, we have a little iron pillar, which looks like some sort of industrial glass. We have fluorescent lights, so it's pretty handy. We have a sort of signpost here. Go ahead, right-click it, select texture, and there is all sorts of things to choose from. Let's go ahead and check out this one. And this one is animated. That's pretty cool. Over here, we have the crossing gate itself. We have a block that is only known as the, quote, decoration block. I imagine it would function similar to how the platform block in Zora no Denshi behaves, kind of like a sort of facade. Not sure, but it seems to be a work in progress. Over here we have a ticket vending machine. We have one of those things that you go through where you basically stick the ticket in and lets you through. It seems to be more of a role play thing more than anything. Over here we have, I forget the names. We have part of a switch right here, and I have used this alongside Redstone. I've done what I could to try to get switches to, well, switch, and I have had pretty much no success. So I do not know how to make switches, well, switch. And over here we have the flag. Go ahead and change that, and there's a much larger one. So let's shrink it back down to something like that. Over here we have a spotlight. Just go ahead and place it down, and it faces in the direction towards you. If you want to turn it on, just go ahead, boom. Apply redstone signal. Now, the pipe is a little unusual in that you can right-click it and you can basically have like an open-ended one right there, or you can have it come to a stub. A little unusual. And that just about wraps up the blocks, except it does not. Over here we have a sort of shipping container that you can actually put stuff in, which is pretty handy. We have the plant prop right here. There's only two. There's like sort of a pine tree and then a sort of sprout, which I assume is like if you want to place it down, if you want to emulate like you're in a garden road or something. And as for these two fellas, they don't really do much. This is the NPC and the driver control, I believe it's called. The motorman. I'm sorry. They don't really do much at the present moment. I assume that like you can have this guy, you can set them to go to different destinations and they'll automatically drive trains for you. That's, well, at least I assume. And over here, they don't really do much. You can go ahead and change what they look like. And I think this is pretty cool. This looks like it's based off of one of the, like the Honda robots? I think it's Honda, I'm not sure. But that pretty much wraps up the selection of blocks, and we'll be moving on to the next section. And here we are with the remaining weapons, tools, and other vehicles. Well, at least the ones that work anyway. So the wrench here seems to be a major work in progress, but if you right-click it, you can cycle through all these different modes. I have not been able to try to get any of these modes working, so it seems to be a fairly work in progress. Night vision device is, well, you apply it and you get this sort of effect. So, fairly straightforward. The paint tool, go ahead and right-click it. Actually, I believe it's shift right-click, my bad. You can change the radius. You can change the RGB value. Or alternatively, you can put in the hexadecimal value. You can also put in the alpha, which is pretty much like how opaque you want it to be. So you can go ahead and like paint a big old oil slick on the ground here. You can paint all sorts of stuff. I honestly think this tool is pretty cool. And I think it'd probably have its uses as well for like marking out where you want stuff to go. So with the tools pretty much aside at this point, granted there are some other ones, but they don't really seem to do much at the moment. Move on to the weapons. Now, there seem to be three main weapons. There's your sniper, there's your automatic, and then there's your not automatic. Not automatic tend to be pretty much the same. You can hold them down, and they don't... You can hold down the right mouse button, and they don't really fire too terribly often. And of course, you can go ahead and shoot stuff with them. The sniper guns, on the other hand, you get like a sort of sniper scope effect. Now, the accuracy on these guys is not exactly great. As you can see, that pig is still alive. The automatic, on the other hand, you can basically just go ahead, hold right-click, and watch pigs right in front of you stare at you while you're attempting to shoot them with a rifle. Oh. Or that can happen. That works too. So we got all sorts of guns right here. They work pretty much the same with the exception of the razor gun. Now, the razor gun does something unusual. It does this. Yeah, I can't imagine taking this onto a normal world and watch how deep it would go. That is pretty incredible. It makes no sound, which is kind of unusual. You don't expect it to make a sound like pew, or whatever. There does seem to be a camera item here, but it also seems to be fairly, well, not exactly working at the moment. So now we move on to the other vehicles. Now we have the, quote, car, which is really more of a tank. Go ahead and right-click it, and there's only one... It seems like there's only one real option for a car, and that's Steve's car. The rest appear to be tanks. Let's go ahead and choose the Mark V Crusader. Gosh, I despise... Well, I kind of despise playing this thing in World of Tanks. But you can go ahead, right-click it. You can go ahead and you can drive around. Fairly intuitive. The turret goes where you look. You just hop right out and it stops. So don't worry about it driving off on you. I have not figured out the buttons on shooting, so don't ask me about that. I do not know. Here we have the airplane. You have several options for the airplane. You get like a sort of B-2 bomber. You get something that looks kind of like something out of a Marvel movie. It looks kind of like a, I believe the V-22s, the Ospreys. It looks similar to an Osprey. And then you have the option of a large passenger jet, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll be sticking with the default. Or we can stick with that. That works too. Very, very big. Go ahead and try to climb into the cockpit here. Which I believe we will have to go back to start right here and right-click. Yep, there we go. Okay, go ahead and hit F5. Now the controls for the aircraft are very, very intuitive. Basically just press W to go forward, and you hold space to go up once you've reached a certain speed. And there you are, you're flying. And if you want to go back down, you just hold Shift. So don't worry about it, you're not going to get immediately kicked out of the vehicle if you press Shift once, which is very, very nice. The view is quite clogged, but I can only imagine watching one of these from the ground. So let's go ahead and descend. Make a very sharp descent. And we get on to the last one. Now, I have not figured out how to get one of these things firing, but we have artillery. Let's see. We'll stick with this one. Now let's go ahead and see about grabbing one of these. Hop in here. Now, again, it doesn't really seem like that I can do very much with this. I do not know how to get this to fire. like you can left click, right click. I'm not seeing any particles or anything. I'm not hearing any sounds. But it's pretty cool. Now, the last one, and you may have seen this in the previous sections, there is a ship. There's actually two ships. One is really just like a larger, more sleeker version of the standard vanilla wooden boat. The second seems to be a sort of Japanese World War II battleship, which is very cool. If I haven't already, I'll see about putting images of them up on the screen to give you an idea of what they look like. And let's see, I believe that about wraps it up. Alright, and it looks like that's about it for this review. Although, I do have a couple of last things. First thing, some of you may have been screaming at your screen that I haven't reviewed the Signal itself. Never, under any circumstance, place down the Signal. Your game will crash. Also, try not to use pick block on anything if you can at all help it, because chances are extremely high that if you use pick block, you are going to end up with a crash on your hands. And I don't mean a derailment. Let's see, what else is there? Oh yeah, it feels really good to... It's great to see that this mod, at long last, got translated and got uploaded to Curse. I mean, it's a bit later than I'd kind of hoped. It's... To my understanding, the mod's been out for a very long time. But I'm just glad it's out there, and I look forward to the content packs and updates that'll come to it as the weeks and months progress. Now, another thing, if some of you remember my notes at the beginning of the video, yeah, I've pretty much done making Minecraft videos. I don't really play the game anymore, for multiple reasons, really, but there is a slim chance that if I find a nice, nicely populated railroad mod server, that I might end up joining. I don't know. We'll just see how things go out. My life's going to be is going to start becoming very busy this year, and I won't really have time to do much. Partly because not only will I be, you know, going to college, getting a job, but I'm also working on two very, very special projects, and I cannot wait to show you them. Although, won't have anything to truly show for probably another year or two. But that is that. Thank you all for watching, and I don't really know what else to say, but ciao!